Welcome back. This is Tim and Julie Harris, and this is a fabulously fun, frantic, sometimes freak show Friday.
You've been warned.
You've been warned. So on Fridays, and this is your full disclosure, we don't do a lot of, well, we try not to do a lot with real estate. We talk about sort of things that are, zany, hopefully not too off color, but whatever it is that are of Julie and I's whatever's floating around in our psyches is what we're going to talk about today. We do have an outline. Julie always brings some great subjects for us to talk about. And I'd say we use her outlines probably 50% of the time for the Friday shows, because again, it's Freeform Friday and we're going to talk about whatever's top of mind. And I'm going to start out by sharing with you guys something that happened yesterday afternoon, that I think is very, I don't know, validating, but also I'm going to go with validating. I can't think of a better word. So Julie and I have been predicting that this was going to be the start of a 25-year housing boom. We've done many podcasts on that, and we've been waiting for someone to sort of refute or argue or come up with a reason why we're wrong. We've been hoping that somebody would, so that we can have maybe a more balanced approach. But the only thing we found is people that are essentially that we've convinced in essence. And we really broke it down. We spent months thinking through it, like 6 months thinking through it, middle of last summer, thinking why it feels like we're at the beginning stages, at the bottom of a housing market, and it's going to be a 25-year housing boom. And in those, we did a series of podcasts. I think ended up doing 2 or 3. We updated it in the last one. And we really laid it out. The biggest driver of why we know that there's going to be a big housing boom is demographics. So there's demand. And if you have demand, the market's going to, at least in the capitalistic, world, the market is going to figure it out. And the market figuring out part had yet to be resolved when Julie and I were writing our points, but we told you what we thought had to happen for the market to finally catch up with demand. And all of those things are happening. And I don't know, it's happening at the exact time frame that we thought it was going to happen. I know that sounds crazy. Trust me, it sounds crazy to me, but it is. It's happening exactly like we thought it was going to happen. Now, let me break this down for you, and I'm not going to make this podcast all about those predictions. You guys got to go back or just go to Google and just search "make housing great again." So let's start out with that. We do believe that the Trump administration is going to fulfill their mission statement of making this the new golden era. They've done it, and they're doing it on many different fronts. But the next front that they're going to be, I think, addressing is housing. Donald Trump yesterday put out a little, what would be called a truth, right, on his platform, talking about the fact that he is exploring releasing Fannie and Freddie from conservatorship. It's already kind of baked in that he's going to. He wanted to in his first administration, and now he's put all the people in place to release it. Now, what does that mean? Fannie and Freddie were once publicly traded companies during the housing boom. And again, listen to those past podcasts, listen to the interview I did with Keith Jensen, and you guys can sort of understand the history of it. But then during the housing crunch or crash, the government put Fannie and Freddie into conservatorship. Conservatorship is essentially where they become, I think the government essentially controls them, is the easiest way. Some people will say, and this is probably what makes the most sense, is that the government seized Fannie and Freddie, which were publicly traded companies, and socialized them. And if you've ever read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, just imagine Rearden Steel. Okay, I know I'm speaking like 3 of you right now, but still, that's the essence of what happened.
Yeah.
So when that happened, government essentially socialized financing of real estate, and they did, and they control now. Fannie Freddie controls almost like a vast majority of all residential mortgages, and through Freddie Mac, a lot of the commercial loans as well. That is all going to change. What we are expecting to have happen in the month of June, and that's what Julie and I were predicting, that Trump is going to announce a program. We're hoping it's called Make Housing Great Again, because then it would be just hilarious because we even got the name right. What do you think, Julie? You think we're going to get that right?
I think so. I think it fits right in.
Yeah, it does. So, and what that's going to do is release Fannie and Freddie from conservatorship. They're going to be publicly traded companies, but what's going to happen is he's going to Again, I don't want to get into the weeds here, but he's going to do a new IPO. Fannie and Freddie are going to be essentially how do what I say it without getting too nerdy. They're going to be essentially rolled up into one entity, and it's going to become a public offering. And that public offering will be for the largest IPO in the history of business, in the history of the world, because you're taking one of the most profitable companies in the world, those two entities, and now you're releasing them to the public market. So it's going to be a massive, massive IPO. And when the IPO will happen, might happen into this year, might happen into next year. But the plans to do the IPO, the plans to how to release it, the plans to essentially make free Fannie and Freddie again, those are already baked in. And in our opinion, it's going to be officially announced June, if not sooner, but June's just a couple of weeks away. So that's when it's probably going to happen. What that's going to do, remember we said we knew there was demand because of demographics. That's the reason we are confident that there was going to be a 25-year, essentially, you guys can call it whatever you want to, bull run, housing boom, whatever you want to call it, because of demographics. Just the sheer demand for housing was like nothing the world has ever seen. That sounds like a grandiose statement, but it's actually factual. If you don't believe me, listen to the past podcasts. We did our research. So what we believe is going to happen is Fannie and Freddie are going to be recapitalized as publicly traded companies, and then they're going to start investing in housing. Obviously, they're going to be creating new types of mortgage products. They're going to be creating new types of home ownership. You're going to have opportunities for, let's say, if you have good credit, but you don't have the down payment, there's going to be a way that Fannie and Freddie might give you the down payment of your property and then take an ownership interest in the upside. So if you, for example, decide to live in the house for 20 years and you sell it in 20 years, they're going to get their down payment back plus a percent of the appreciation, things like that. There's going to be all kinds of new mortgage products that are going to come out. But what we are I'll say I'm 100% confident of what I'm about to say is true. The Fannie and Freddie, or whatever the new entity is going to call it, let's call it Trump housing. I'm trying to make some of you guys laugh, but whatever it's going to be called. They are going to invest enormous amounts of money in new construction, because that's the only way. The amount of housing units that the country is back, what is it, Julie? 4 million? We need like something like that just to even meet demand.
At least there's a lot of different estimates, but it's always 3 to 5 million that we're shy of homes. Yeah.
So you're going to see the government, through this new entity, which was Fannie and Freddie, hopefully you guys are following me in all this, is going to start investing in or partnering with national builders to start doing massive new subdivisions. And the only thing that has ever happened like this in American history, at least, is what happened after World War II. And that's exactly what happened after World War II. And Julie and I modeled out our prediction back when you guys listened to the podcast that we did. Now, like I said, we've done it 3 times and updated our predictions every time. Just Google "make housing great again." So all of this is happening now. And all of this is happening at the perfect time for you if you've got your mind dialed into the fact that you are in the right place at the right time. So we are extremely excited. And frankly, I'm a little weary, or tired rather, because I was watching the news all night, trying to see if anything else was new coming in, because this is the perfect scenario to really set up the industry, residential housing, just for the sake of what we focus on, to have what will start probably in June, July, August, a return to optimism. A move away from the uncertainty, which everyone's been plagued by, and move back towards exuberance like we have never experienced in housing. And the funny part will be is how people rewire their brains, because most people's expectations will be boom and bust and boom and bust. And this is not what this is going to be. This is going to be it's not going to be a hockey stick type thing, but it's going to be an ever increasing amount of home sales. And that's also going to necessitate more real estate agents. Oh, AI and all this, blah, more real estate agents. And Julie and I model all this out again. You can listen to our past podcasts on that. So I am extremely excited. I feel a little bit resolved, to be honest with you. I feel so, I don't know what the word is, Julie. Like I said, I'm a little tired. I need more of my coffee, but I feel happy for all of our podcast listeners. Optimistic, but happy too, because
sure,
there's a lot of agents that have been having the market in one form or another, kick their asses for the last 2 years. And all of that is going to turn around for you guys, provided you're really focusing on where the opportunities are going to be in this new market. And we have all of our coaching, all of our training, everything we've said on in Premier Coaching, Elite Coaching, to our EXP Realty group, has been trying to dial you guys into the market that's going to come and having you, yes, be opportunistic for what's available for you right now, but also realizing that you need to be looking downrange next 6 months and 12 months so you can be there to meet the market where it's going to be. Does that make sense, Julie?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And one of the things that I look at is the language that they're, excuse me, the language that they're using in the Trump administration, like the new golden era. And the fact that it seems that there is a North Star where there hasn't been one for a long time. That's what we're driving towards. And there are a lot of things that seem to be commingling with each other. One of them is what you just talked about with Fannie and Freddie. Hopefully, as part of the new housing boom, which will be tied to this, maybe there will be things for the builders where tariffs on lumber are tied into that, and it's a lighter version of that so that we can build faster. You know, you mentioned that we're down by, 3 to 5 million homes deficit. There's only 180,000. There's a lot of building going on. If you live in Texas, everywhere you look, there's a lot of new construction. But that said, there's only 120,000 existing new construction homes. That's countrywide. That's not like in Dallas. That's countrywide. So that's something that I'm looking at. And you mentioned also different mortgage products. We're already seeing some homeowner grants, down payment money you don't have to pay back. And qualifying for first-time homebuyer stuff is getting less restrictive. So all of this is just kind of bubbling up a little bit. And now that, like I was saying, the language that they use, the fact that Trump actually said IPO, that was one of the big question marks hanging over this whole thing. And I think that that's why Fannie and Freddie are already seeing the stock value rise, because he said IPO. So I think optimism and happiness, cautiously optimistic. I think that's the mindset to have, and
Yeah.
to be committed to participating in it as somebody who is in the real estate world, all of our listeners here.
And, we talk a lot about AI. AI is another, I think you and I have a lot of passion around it. And I'm confident that AI is going to not it's going to make agents more relevant, not less relevant, because what AI is going to do, it's going to make it so you guys can focus more on where your highest and best use is, which is dealing directly with customers. And you've got to be really clear about where all this technology is going to go. And you listen to this podcast every day, especially if you're a Friday listener, because Friday listeners are our true blue listeners. You know what our stance is on AI. AI at the end of the day it's going to be very disruptive on the lead generation side of the business, more so than it's going to be, well, the transactional side of the business, obviously AI fits in perfectly. But on the lead generation side of the business, what I'm fearful of for a vast majority of the industry that's only been in the business for really at this point, maybe 10, like Julie and I have been blessed or cursed, depends on your perspective, to have this, perspective that goes back to the mid 1990s when we really started selling real estate. And we have seen the coming and the going of some of the same ideas that are just getting rehashed now, the marketing and the branding and the things of that nature. And there's direct response advertising. There's all these little trends. And what you guys don't understand is, because you're new in the industry, is your perspective, and this is true when people think about history too, they only think of their timeline. They don't realize that history happened before they were born. So that's kind of a fascinating phenomenon that most humans experience. It's fascinating, I think, but that's true also when you're looking at real estate. So you think all the marketing and the branding and all that stuff has only been in the zeitgeist of the industry while you've had a real estate license. If you knew that it'd been around forever, and if you then had said, well, you know what, I wonder how it all plays out. So what happens is these trends come in the industry and they sound sexy, and they're always sold as easy buttons and shiny objects, and they're always designed to make you believe that you can do enough marketing and advertising that people will call you. Ultimately, whenever you guys, I'll tell you what the ultimate litmus test of anything that you're considering buying as far as marketing and advertising. If it's trying to relieve you of I'm air quoting for those listening. Sorry, I know air quotes, very 1990s, but there you go. If they're trying to relieve you of the perceived stress of rejection and trying to convince you that your goal is to market and advertise to the extent where people call you and you don't have to do any real work, and that alleviates the need for to have high level of skills, it's a scam. There it is. Because if somebody wanted to scam you guys and sell you something in your business, what they're going to do is they're going to write down what all your perceived pain points are. Your perceived pain points are lack of knowledge. Your perceived pain points of lack of tolerance for being rejected. Your perceived pain points of knowing what to say and how to say it. In other words, lack of skill, all these things. Guys, understanding. And so what they do is they write all these things down, and then they create a message that's going to be, Julie just messaged me. Oh yeah, thank you. You're reminding me of something important. So what they then do is they'll say, okay, well, how can we convince Bob that he never has to feel rejected, or he never has to, learn how to feel like a salesperson, all these other things. And then, oh, we know what we're going to do, marketing and advertising. And guys, this has been done. It really started, I'd say, in earnest in the 1990s. And now it just iterated, became digital. And that's what direct response advertising really is too. And by the way, all of these things do work to a certain degree, but none of them work like proactive lead generation. Now, I want you to follow me here. The reason that proactive lead generation is not widely taught like what Julie and I do is because it's not as a purveyor of education and coaching that's focused on helping you guys be proactive lead generators. It's not as profitable versus if I were to sell you into some belief that a digital version, a digital marketing and lead generation and branding is the way to go. So I teach you guys the skills. Julie and I in our coaching organization teach you guys how to proactively lead generate, how to pre-qualify, how to present, and the rest of it. And after you reach a certain level of confidence and competence, then you are autonomous. You don't really need a lot of coaching and training. You might need a tune up and refocus, and you need somebody obviously looking over your shoulder, making sure you've not become complacent. You want to always improve your skills. But what these other entities want to do is they want you to be addicted to the new shiny objects because they know those new shiny objects have a very short shelf life. So they're going to last 6 months to a year, and then they're going to stop working, and then you're going to need a new one, then you're going to need a new one. They, like a drug dealer, basically, they want you to stay addicted. We don't. Julian, we think is it immoral or unethical? I don't really know. But one thing for sure is it definitely is wrong. So what Julie and I want to do is we want to make it so, like, we don't want to be your guru. We want to be your coach, your trainer, and you join us at EXP. We want to be partners with you, but we want you to create your own, rise from the unconscious incompetence phase. And Julie, you ready to give them the 4 phases of learning? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, you start out as unconsciously incompetent. That means that you don't know what you don't know. Say the day that you got your real estate license, you got your license, but you don't know the rest of the picture. Then you have an aha moment. You go, maybe I need a pre-listing package. I've heard of this thing. There's stuff that I don't know. You're now conscious of your incompetence. You've got to work on it. Then you move into getting all of those tools, those scripts, those presentations, the skills, and you move into conscious competence. You are consciously becoming more and more competent at your job. In this case, selling real estate, whether you're an agent or broker, et cetera. Okay. As you do that repetitively, now you become unconsciously competent. Unconsciously competent, it's like autopilot. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I know how to get near 100% results. But that takes time. And here's the rub. There's no skipping of those stages. You can't just go straight to that top, unconscious competence where everything's autopilot and I just do my deals like this. You can't skip to that as much as everybody wants to. But what you were talking about, like the marketing and branding people that say, and they'll lead with that. They'll say, never cold call again, because they know that's your hot button. And they put everything into the cold calling bucket, which it shouldn't be, because let's say you're calling a past client. Is that really a cold call? No, that's a warm call. They know who you are. They like to talk to you. So they'll lead with that because they know you want to circumvent those 2 middle stages where you have to work on your skills and your presentation, and then you have to practice your skills and get the results that you're looking for. They know that you want to skip to the end, and so they market to you that way, that exact way, never cold call again.
Yeah,
Who wouldn't
exactly.
respond to that? I'll hit that easy button.
I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if we were all born natural salespeople? We all had the ability to pick up the phone and proactively lead generate. You know, it's amazing.
Well,
I
you
was
all do have the ability to do it. You just have to do it.
I had a nice conversation last night with Mike Sherrard. He's
Mhm.
up in Canada, and he's a big has a big group at EXP. Really good guy. And Mike's all about the marketing and the branding. He's all about the marketing and branding primarily to focus on generating buyer leads. So Mike and I and Julie and I, we're having a conversation so how we can work together because he knows what we teach in our podcast in our coaching business is necessary, and his heart's in the right place because he wants to help the people that are listening to him go to the next level. And so the deficit in what the marketing and branding guys do is that even if you can generate a lead, if you don't know how to pre-qualify that lead, let alone close them for an appointment, if you don't actually take a high level sales skills approach to it, you're just wasting your money. And the other thing it's this always makes me laugh is these marketing and branding guys will always tell you this big story, especially the ones that are telling you to run Facebook ads and all this stuff. You got to pay for that shit. Those ads aren't free.
Right.
So now you're basically thinking, well, I'm going to do all this stuff so I can avoid rejection, so I can skip the learning, the levels of learning that Julie just laid out for me. And I'm just going to run ads. People will call me, I'll funnel, and my system will drip on them and do all the heavy lift for me. And I can just, basically sit back and just go out and easily sell real estate. Oh, I got a better idea. I'm going to hire a bunch of minions and they're going to go out and sell real estate for me. That's the fantasy you guys are sold. It's just a lie. It is funny though, back in the 90s, there was a version of that that did work, but the margins back then were so small. And again, Julie messaged me, she just wanted me to get stuck on the soapbox. We talk about this every day on our podcast. The moral of the story is where the AI is going. It's going to make it so those who are building marketing and branding and doing all this funneling and that's essentially that's the core of their business. They're going to be irrelevant because everybody and their brother is going to be able to easily emulate what they're doing instantaneously. I know you guys probably are like right now everyone thinks, well, I got to do this app, I got to do this app, I got to, create this CRM, I got to do all these complicated things. And you talk to these marketing and branding guys, and sometimes they create these BS spider webs of things going to this big complicated mess of things. And they are doing that so you feel overwhelmed. So you just say, Uncle, just do it for me. That's the whole sales pitch. That's what they're doing. So what you're going to have to understand is those guys are the ones that are going to be obsolete. That's where AI is going to obsolete that whole thing. And where is that going to leave agents who have never learned how to do the real work of real estate, which we focus on, always have. All those agents that have never learned the sales skills, all those agents that have never learned how to pre-qualify and how to, when you're having a conversation with a potential client, the little nuanced differences in how you say things, how you phrase things, that's what the difference is between a low to average agent is and then a really huge top producer. And Julie gave you the 4 stages of learning, which is also fascinating because, again, this is another conversation I had yesterday with somebody else, Dan and Carrie Shaw, if you guys want to know. Again, part of our EXP group. And we're having a conversation about them, the fact that Carrie sold like 1,200 houses and she's a massive producer, fantastic, wonderful people. But the skill set of being able to sell a crap ton of real estate, even that many homes, and then being able to teach other people to do it, it's not the same thing. Julie and I sold a ton of real estate, thousands of homes. Learning how to teach others how to do the same thing was so much harder than, frankly, had I known, I certainly wouldn't have signed myself up for it. It was so much harder to become a great coach, so much more work, not learning how to train, but to coach. Training is different than coaching. This is basically training what we're doing now. Coaching is essentially learning how to ask questions. It's like counseling, frankly. It's like going to see your own private,
It's
psychologist.
business counseling, basically.
Basically, and great. And we have to listen. We have to ask questions that are going to lead you to bridging the gaps in your brain yourself. Because really great coaching is not. Essentially when you have a really great coach, it because the coach isn't telling you what to do. The coach is asking you questions and your brain is figuring out the answers. Because when you thought about something, you figured out the answers, then you now have the knowledge and it's there forever. If somebody just tells you something, you don't remember it except for maybe that moment and it probably doesn't seed into your brain. So you guys see the difference? So if you go to a trainer and they basically always want to talk about themselves and always want to, make these big grandiose statements about themselves and all this stuff, it's big ego fest. That's not coaching. What we do is coaching. It's really hard. We had to, Julie and I used to get up every morning at 4:30 in the morning and start our coaching calls at 5 a.m. And we would do one-on-one coaching calls. We, between the two of us, had 130 to 140 one-on-one clients that were paying
Every week.
every week, right? That were paying at least $1,000 a month. And we did that consistently for like 6 years. And the reason we did it that long and at that level isn't because maybe we're sadists. There is that. But the real reason is because we wanted to really master the skill, and we wanted to what Julie and I would do is, after we did all those coaching calls, 12 to 14 a day, we would then go on walks, and then we would dissect who in our schedule was moving forward and who wasn't. And then she and I would talk about why that person was moving forward and why that person wasn't. And then we would work on helping the person that wasn't moving forward to move forward. And that's what we did. And because Julie and I we were essentially in buds, and we had graduated as Navy SEALs. We were good in team 2 and team 3, and now we joined team 6. And now we are in team 6. We were ready to move on to what was next. And we were constantly trying to improve that skill set, because when you're working directly with people as a real estate coach, that is so much harder because people are so much different, and there is no one size fits all approach. Each of you have your different strengths and your different weaknesses, your different biases, and all these different things. And if we just said, this is how you do it, you do this marketing and branding, or even you start calling expired. Some people are frankly not going to ever be good at calling expired. The skills gap, the mindset gap is too great, and they could create opportunities doing other things. We help them with that. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say, guys, is you have got to realize the best version of yourself as a real estate salesperson, as a real estate professional, as whatever you're trying to accomplish personally, it's still ahead of you. You may have thought it was behind you. Oh, it's during COVID, I made all that money. Oh, it was during the housing boom, I made all that money. No, because we are really at the very beginning stages of the new golden era, make housing great again. Oh, I know that's triggering some of you, but get past your Trump derangement syndrome and realize that you're a real estate professional, and your highest and truest purpose on this planet as a real estate professional is be of service of others. And the best opportunities for you to do that, they've just arrived. So you've got to be incredibly excited about that. That's what Julie and I were trying. That's what we've been talking about between the two of us nonstop, especially since we saw that some of our predictions were coming true a little bit quicker than we thought that they would. Julie, what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to digest. And what is an agent to do with their day? You guys have to decide. And that's why and I love that when you say the difference between training and coaching, right? Training, most of you guys get some version of that from a team leader or a broker, or, they're going to say, here's the difference. You need more listings. You want to make more money? You got to have more listings. Okay, so great. Now what? They don't tell you how to do it. They don't get to know you to the point where they see your strengths and weaknesses and what's the right path for you. Because here's the thing. All of our coaching clients are not following the exact same path, but they are following a business plan. So, that's the difference. Of course, you need more deals. You need to make more money. You need more listings. Most of you don't need more buyers, right? But how do you do that? That's the difference. That's the difference between coaching and training.
One of the things that we've been doing, and we've had a lot of fun at it, so we're going to keep doing it, is our masterminds. We're doing 2 to 3 masterminds per week. If you've not attended a mastermind yet, what we're doing is we're focusing on helping you guys overcome the 3 biggest challenges that you're experiencing in real estate right now. I'm not even going to tell you what those challenges are. It's a cliffhanger. But if you listen to us every day, you probably can figure it out pretty quick. Yes. So go to harrismastermind.com and sign up. Choose your day and your time, harrismastermind.com, and participate. Listen, learn, and feel excited, because you are in the right place at the right time. So that is what I was thinking about prior to today's show, Julie. And I would like to get to some of your zany, fun, non-real estate related points now. But remember, guys, your homework from today is to register yourself for an upcoming mastermind. Just go to harrismastermind.com.
All right. So being that it's Fun Friday, those of you who have stuck it out this far, we're going to change topics on you. Fun Friday is to expand your thinking and get you out of the real estate weeds, even if it's just for a few minutes. So The first one is story. You guys can vote on what your favorite story is, right? Or so that's number one. Paws or claws? The very big mix-up. You like that
So
title?
is that how you're doing it? Yeah, it's great. So that's how you're doing it. So they have to vote, and you
What
have
they like the best.
are you? She has 5 stories, and if you guys are regular listeners, you know Julie is a super nerd. I mean, now that I'm looking at some of your topics, I realize
We don't have to do all of them, by the way.
no, we're gonna do all of them because some of these are just off the charts super nerd, and it's too funny. So you guys got to vote on what your favorite idea or favorite super nerd story is. And we're going to be putting all these super nerd stories. I'm sorry, Julie's outline on our
Whoops, she slipped.
on our newsletter, right? Go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and register for the outline. The show just it's down below. The link is down below in the show description. Just go to Harris Real Estate Daily if you want some of these stories. By the way, you know, you're rolling into the weekend, you're going to have buyers, you're going to be working with sellers, you're going to be, you know, hanging out with your family or whatever, especially since it's Memorial Day weekend. Some of these funny stories would be really great breaks from the normal routine and the normal conversations, especially if you're have family that's overly addicted to talking politics. Why don't you jump into the first story, Julie, and then imagine you telling this same story to some of your maybe higher stressed people in your life to try to, you know, essentially break them past the stress and be a little bit
Change the
more
tone.
relaxed. All right, Julie. So your first story is paws or claws?
The very big mix-up, as in BEAR. Okay, picture this. It's 2013, and a person named Wang Kaiyu, a banana farmer in China, is thrilled to bring home 2 fluffy puppies from a vendor at the Vietnam border. He's told that they will be stellar watchdogs, so he rolls out the red carpet, daily baths, gourmet chicken dinners, sort of, and the love of the pet parent, all the love that a pet parent can give. Fast forward 2 years, and these pups are acting, let's just say, odd. They're chowing down on Wang's actual chickens, tipping the scales at 100 pounds apiece, and looking more like fuzzy bouncers than Fido. Then one day, Wang spots a wildlife pamphlet and has an oh no moment. These aren't dogs, they're Asian black bears, an endangered species. That's a plot twist. Wang, being the stand up guy he is, calls in the authorities, who whisk the bear siblings to the Yunnan Wild Animal Rescue Center. The bears are now living their best lives, probably dreaming of their chicken chasing days. But this fun Friday tale reminds us sometimes life throws you a curveball, or a bear cub, or 2 bear cubs. So, have you ever had a pet surprise? Share that with us. That's our first story. You like
That's
that?
crazy. You know, I think I saw this. I think I
That's
saw
totally something you would do, by the way.
adopt an animal.
Adopt like they look like well this guy was sold, you know, they're going to be great watchdogs, and they were cute fuzzy, you know, there are dog breeds that totally look like baby bear cubs. What's the difference? Till they
That's
grow up and
awesome.
eat your chickens, I guess.
Would we get a baby bear? I mean, if we live
Well, you're
full
always asking me for monkeys and stuff, so
listeners, listen, don't you think at this point, we've been married for 34 years this year, we should get a house monkey. I only think now, granted, I don't know how the hell we're going to travel with it, but that's
your
Julie's
problem.
Julie's going to be the monkey mom, so that'd be pasted
This is why we don't have one.
because you don't want to deal with the monkey. But
Yeah.
guys, don't you think that I've been
Oh,
wanting to get a monkey? Yeah, those little cute ones, those little tiny ones. You can put it in your jacket pocket.
I did see a story last week. I almost used it about a gal that I forget where she was. I think they're in Australia. Have you ever seen these bush babies?
Yeah, yeah.
They look like kind of, I guess they are monkeys, but they look like flying tiny monkeys, I guess. They'll leap from tree to tree, and they have these arms that they use like wings, and they hop a lot, right? So she adopted it, and it was like the size of your thumbnail, tiny, tiny, tiny little thing that she found, raised it on like droppers and everything like that, and it would hang out on her shoulder. And eventually one day it just decided that it wanted to be wild, and now it lives in her backyard and flings itself from trees to trees. So but here's the difference. It lives outside, Tim. Lives outside.
Weren't we on a plane once and then you saw some lady that had something tucked into her jacket?
Oh, I read you that story. We weren't on the plane, but it was a story I came across where what was it? First the flight attendant heard it snoring, and then came over and saw that like the lady's sweater was going like this. And then it was some kind of capuchin monkey or something like that. And then it got out and ran around the plane. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's
Topic
move on.
number 1, strange pet stories.
Okay, strange pet stories. You like that one? Share your own strange pet stories. By the way, if you have any show ideas or strange stories that you think might be appropriate for the Friday show, do message us on Instagram or obviously in comments on YouTube, whichever you choose. All right, story number 2, Sledgehammer Surprise, the lost city of no
Darren
identity.
Kuyu.
Darren Kuyu. Go for it, Julie Harris.
Okay, now this is a bit of a housing story at the end of the day. Imagine swinging a sledgehammer during a home renovation in Cappadocia, Turkey, and stumbling into a secret that's been hidden for centuries. That's exactly what happened to one unsuspecting homeowner who knocked down a basement wall and found not a storage closet, but a doorway to Darren Kuyu, a mind-blowing underground entire city carved deep into the earth underneath their house. It wasn't just a room, it was a sprawling metropolis that could house 20,000 people, complete with kitchens, churches, and even wine cellars. There's your real estate upgrade, right? Or update. Of course, archaeologists got down there and figured out what this was. It was built by the Phrygians between the 12th and 7th centuries BC. It was a fortress of secrecy. It was completely underground, expanded by the Byzantines to dodge invaders during wars. It has 18 levels, again, going down 280 feet. It had massive stone doors to lock out enemies and ventilation shafts so clever they'd make modern engineers jealous. The kicker, it stayed forgotten about until that fateful hammer swing. Now it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's open for tours, but only 8 levels are accessible unless you're brave enough to hunt for secret tunnels. So, have you found something crazy or interesting or archaeological in your home renovations or clients of yours? You never know what you're going to come across. So there you go.
So you know this, Julie, but
Yeah.
listeners might not. Of course, the leaf blower guy is coming by right now. Hopefully you guys can't hear that. If you can, just bear with me. So we have some coaching clients in England. Of course, they're going to make all that noise, Julie. You know
Yeah,
what?
I don't hear it on my screen, just so you know. You and I hear it, but I don't think they can.
Okay, that's fine. I'll keep talking. So we have coaching clients and we have people that are in EXP Realty Group that are over in England. And in most of Europe, modern civilization and modern everything is built on history, literally. So if you, the first time I heard this, I just thought it was so fascinating. If you have a house, a little country, village or house in some little shire someplace, right? You are digging in your backyard, and if all of a sudden you come across old Roman anything, it could be stone, it could be whatever, you legally have to stop digging and you have to call some government, what have you, and they then have to, go and do an exploration, make sure you haven't discovered your own, in your backyard, maybe some say it, Julie.
Archaeological.
Yeah, relevant dig. Okay. And that is a normal thing in most of Europe because most of Europe, again, is just built on history. And, if you guys can just imagine like a never ending layer cake, that's kind of fascinating to really think about that I wonder how many places in just staying with England or certainly going to Rome, how many places that are not built on previous settlements, homes, roads, in most of these cities, because they're literally ancient, the answer is probably to my question, none, because it's easier to just push some dirt over what was there than ever clear the site. And that is just absolutely mind-blowingly fascinating. Julie, did you hear about the pyramids that I'm not prepared for this, but I bet you know what I'm about to say. There are pyramids that were discovered in a jungle that when they essentially satellites have been able to see them, and that not only are the pyramids in a jungle and they are able to see through the canopy of the jungle, but they're also discovering things. And so there was a strange shape that was in Google Earth that was off the coast of, I think it was San Diego. And it was a massive, like bizarre shape, and people online had discovered it on Google Earth and were sharing it with others. And then somehow, or for some reason, mysteriously, that shape is no longer available on Google Earth. It was edited. And
That's suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah, a little. And there's been other instances where these satellite imagery has been edited, though, there's still, if you do a little research, especially if you use AI, you're going to be able to find the unedited pictures. But that is fascinating because, I wonder if they have now, like, let me share this one fact with you. And again, this is going to maybe surprised a lot of people. So we were all raised, Julie and I are Generation X. Julie and I were raised, and a lot of you guys were raised, that evolution is a thing, right? I remember seeing the monkey becomes of this, it becomes of this, becomes of this, becomes of this. And you guys have all, been raised that way. Well, we weren't ever taught that was the theory of evolution. We were just taught evolution is a thing. And I've had conversations with adults about this. Well, have you noticed that that's not being taught anymore? Not in the sense that they're just 100%, they being the educators and the people that write their curriculums, they are no longer just saying that there's not a countervailing point to evolution. And it's not because they're being religious, though that's what a lot of people think. And the real reason is because there's no proof of evolution on the human side. There literally is no real smoking gun that proves that we evolved from one thing to the other to the other. There isn't any. And if you were to take the time, and again, I had this conversation with Tracy. You remember this, Julie? We were at our house for dinner.
Oh, yeah, Tracy, as in Tracy and Keith. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, and I was having this conversation with her, and I brought this up to her. And she's about our age. She had never had that thought before, let alone come across any of this information. I'm sure that I got her started on it at the very least. But the moral of the story is a lot of the skeletal evidence, air quoting here for those listening, evidence of evolution was fake. It was literally fake. Evolutionists, scientists that had essentially overinvested themselves in the theory of evolution, written books about it, being, professors about it, were stymied because they could never, and this happened like 6 or 7 times, we're never able to actually prove that there was evolution. Again, there's no bridge. So if you're going to say that humans came from, Neanderthals, and humans came from these other species of humans, or these other, non-human animals, let's just say, then let's find some bones. I mean, my gosh, we can find just about anything, but there isn't any. And so what these scientists did is they actually created their own. And it's obviously since been proven that none of this stuff was real. I find that really, really fascinating. And the other thing that's fascinating, and I think personally, the real reason that evolution is no longer the thing is because they are finding skeletal evidence, not to reinforce the theory of evolution, but to actually prove that it's not real, because they're finding that there were multiple, like potentially hundreds of different hominids that were on the planet at roughly the same time we were, and they're finding skeletal evidence of that. So there wasn't just humans that came from apes. There were multiple different types of humanoids that were in different parts of the world with different genes. And when they go and, like, for example, bad science will say, well, humans were never on the planet when all these other species were there because we killed them off. They're now finding lots of little, again, through archaeological, damn, why am I tripping on that word today, sister?
Archaeological.
Ugh. Okay. That's my need more coffee word, right?
Achilles heel. Yeah.
Exactly. Today, I'm going to try not to use it again. I'm going to say history. Watch, I'm going to try to.
There you go.
Right. So they're finding evidence in history because they're finding these old camps, basically. When they do these, like, for example, they go in the caves that Julie mentioned, and they're going to find that there's remains of 2 modern humans, let's say, through DNA evidence, and other humanoid species were coexisting and living in the same environment, not killing each other, as these sort of, rigid view of history and this, theory of evolution would have you believe. I find the fact that a lot of that information is still being black boxed, and more people don't know what we're now talking about. And I know I'm doing a terrible job. My only goal is to give you guys the breadcrumbs and you go and research this yourself.
Well,
I
Tim,
find that.
Isn't there a series, we were watching this maybe on History or Discovery Channel. I can't remember the researcher's name, but it's related to that jungle discovery that you were just talking about, where they were flying over and they saw different evidence of buried pyramids.
A different timeline for history. You're talking about on Netflix. Yeah. I don't remember his name, that British guy. Yeah. A totally different timeline for history.
Yes.
that modern
That's
history,
fascinating. That's
it is.
kind of what got
Mod,
us going on this. Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember his name, but modern historians don't want you to know about the fact that it turns out that their timeline for how long humans and humanoids have been on the planet is most certainly complete crap. And then they're completely wrong about that. And what they're really panicked by, because it totally rewrites all the history books and everything that we were all taught. And I find this very fascinating, is that there is now irrefutable evidence that there were very intelligent humans on Earth before what modern historians would have you believe is possible. And they're now, for example, in Egypt, some of the ancient pyramids predate by thousands of years the Egyptians. So who originally built them? Graham Hancock. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember that.
Good job.
You guys didn't do this investigation yourself, Graham Hancock. And Graham Hancock is, watch the Netflix series. And then what's really going to be entertaining, if to you, hopefully, when you're exploring all this, is look at how these modern historians hate him. Why do they hate him? Because he is invalidating what they have essentially been paying their bills off of their preset knowledge and the know-it-all. We know it all. COVID should have taught all of us at this point that some of the people that have positioned themselves as being the gurus of knowledge are perhaps needing a little bit of a hard reset. Now, I want to talk about something else that's not on your list too, Julie. Have you been studying or paying attention at all to the Shroud of Turin?
Yes, I don't have it in my notes. There's a lot to that as well, but that's very interesting. I think we talked about that a couple of Fun Fridays ago, but that's another very interesting thing. If you want
What do you remember?
that they have done more studies of the actual, well, I guess we should explain first what the Shroud of
They
Turin
know.
is. Not everybody knows, do you think?
Well, okay. So just Google Shroud of Turin. I'm sure most of you guys know, but you are probably either a believer that it's the Shroud of Christ, or you think that it's something that was created by
Or that it's
Michael,
fake,
that it's
basically.
fake, right? So you're falling into one of those two camps.
Mhm.
And there's lots of lies that have been perpetuated based on bad science that has now been invalidated. So what's interesting is that there were 60-minute stories and headlines and all this, how the Shroud of Turin was the greatest hoax ever. And they're dating it to Michelangelo. And this was all probably about 20 years ago. But now all of the science that they were using to invalidate the Shroud of Turin has since, because of, electron microscopes and the ability to now go into the granular level, the molecular level of the actual cloth itself. They've now been able to prove that the skeptics or the naysayers that the Shroud of Turin was not from that period when Christ was crucified. They are now able to prove that it is a period correct. They're now able to, with no doubt, explore this yourself, and not even taking this from a religious perspective, just strictly from a scientific perspective. All of the people who've said it was fake have now been proven wrong. And what is interesting to me is that there is no mainstream media reports of the fact that the Shroud of Turin has now, at the very least, been proven to be from the same time in history when Christ was crucified. Why would the people that were championing it being fake now be afraid to admit that it was historically accurate as far as when it was, where it's from? It's because then they'd have to admit that there was a Jesus Christ. Why
Right.
would they?
That the Bible and the stories in the Bible and the stories of Christ were not just stories.
Yes. So why would they not want to? Why are they so fearful of validating that the Shroud of Turin was from that period in
Was
history?
authentic, not just old,
Right.
but is actually the real deal.
Because then they're going to have to essentially deal with the fact that Christ was real, which
Mhm.
goes against their anti-religious perspectives and believe the science. And do you guys see how this way of thinking has caused a generation, not just Julie and I's generation, but previous generations, and probably millennials as well, to essentially be trained to believe in thoughts that would not lead you back to believing in God. And I find that very fascinating. I want you guys to explore this whole Shroud of Turin thing yourself. and go deep on it and don't just, really, really, truly explore it. When you do, even if you're not religiously minded, you're going to be shocked about what they've discovered in the Shroud of Turin with the modern ability to look at it and scan it. And I'm telling you, it is, even if you're not a Christian, it is going to cause you to feel some visceral emotional response to the very fact, guys, they were able to get a blood sample from it. It was AB positive, right? And it's one of the rarest blood types that's essentially comes from, Julie, what's my blood type? Do you remember?
I think yours is the same. I always have to
Yeah,
look that up, but
I
yes.
think it was
Well,
too.
it was the blood, it was the fibers of the linen cloth, and it was even down to the type of pollen, flower pollen that they found inside of the linen that apparently was preserved and was from the exact right place
Well,
in Nazareth, I believe.
what I
Yeah.
found fascinating is when there were several people who wrote about how Christ was tortured on his
Mhm.
way to where he has holding his cross. Did I tell you any of this? Did you read any of
Yeah.
this, Julie? Okay, so if you read the Bible and you read these stories, this historical, documentation, they were talking about all the unbelievably grotesque, gruesome ways
Gruesome.
that the Romans tortured Christ on his way to be crucified. And I'm not going to talk about it. You guys have to explore this yourself. So there were people that wrote down this part of his body on this part of his head was hit with this particular implement of horribleness and all these types of things. They now have been able to scan the Shroud of Turin, and they were able to pinpoint accurately match where these various historical things that were written in period. This wasn't like there were people that were writing down, like reporting on what was happening to Christ in real time, and those writings were saved. All right, so this is something that was written 400 years ago, or 400 years after he was died, or
Mhm.
200 years after. This was in period, and so they were able to match what was written to what the evidence is from the Shroud of Turin. That is incredible. Why aren't more people aware of this? Why aren't more people talking about this? Why is this not something that everyone's incredibly, intensely fascinated with? There is something that's changing in our country right now that is a return to faith. And if your faith is Judaism, that's fine. If your faith is Christianity, that's fine. But there's definitely a pull back to faith. There's a pull back to realizing that our relentless pursuit for a sense of attachment, and a lot of people use that sense of attachment as the government. That's what it was. So people were not religious. Maybe they went to church on Christmas. That would be about it. They did not really believe in God. They believed in evolution. A lot of people were raised that way. And then they, generally speaking, they would fall into one political mindset and one political stance, and they lived their lives that way, and they lived in environments that reinforced that, and all their friends were thinking and feeling the same exact ways. Those people are now waking up realizing that that set of beliefs that they've had have not proven out to be true, and they're looking for faith. And Julie, you have you read a whole bunch about the fact that there are millions of people now that
Mhm.
are becoming active participants in Christianity. You remember some of the
Yeah,
things we
well,
talked about?
a lot of different things that play into that. I think what you were talking about is that for a long time, atheism was kind of ties into what you were talking about, where the government has sort of replaced the church, which
They
is,
wouldn't they wouldn't
they
say
wouldn't
they're
say that,
they would, well, Julie, get it right. They wouldn't say they're atheists. They would just say that they don't believe in
yeah,
God, that
or they're
they're
agnostic, or they are spiritual, but not religious. These
exactly
things are all kind of related, right? Same
right.
sort of flavor. And so evidence against that, or the swing the other direction, there's a lot of that out there. One of the things is the Bible in a Day podcast is like one of the number one podcasts in the world. Okay, so that's something. And then the other thing is that there's been tons of reports that Gen Z, the generation after the millennials, has already become the most religious generation, certainly in the US, like since the greatest generation, like even before the baby boomers. So, and it's not just like more religious or more curious about it. It's actually going to church, and specifically more Orthodox and more Catholic, right down to wanting the Latin Mass. So lots of very interesting evidence there. And, that's, excuse me, that's certainly a story that I'm following. But the fact that things like Bible in a Day podcast, which I listen to, it's only like a 20-minute podcast, but it's very interesting. He literally goes all the way through all of the chapters and has a little discussion at the end. That's that popular. I think that's really interesting. And along with that, there's all these movements back to like some people would call it retro things and like real things, IRL, that your entire life is not going to be on TikTok anymore.
Well, so the interesting things focusing on the religious thing, and we can wrap that up, is that when you're having conversations, they call themselves agnostics, by the way. When
Yes,
people who
that's right.
call themselves agnostics, you'll say, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of conversation. And they all the agnostics, they all say, I believe in the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang started everything. That's a theory, by the way. There's no real proof of it. And so then all you have to ask them is, well, okay, I'll go with you on the Big Bang thing, but what created the Big Bang?
Yes,
What,
it's not the end of the story to just say that. That's
or
just a talking point that they don't go very deep on.
it's not the beginning of the story is what you meant to say.
Yeah.
So there was some stuff that came together and caused this thing and caused this thing. Okay, well, it caused that.
Who created that?
If you are even marginally intelligent, if for you to try to come up with a scientific explanation on how there's not a creator, is you just frankly being dishonest, because there's no way to prove out or to suss out any conclusion other than the fact that there's a creator. You just can't do it. No one's been able to do it. I listen to, there's all these podcasts where you have these, straight up atheists or agnostics that are having these conversations with, all the creationism and, evolution and all the rest of it. And then they're talking to somebody who is not necessarily like somebody who's taking a sort of a scientific approach, but has a religious backbone to it.
Those are the most interesting.
I heard there was a great conversation that happened between Eric Weinstein. Oh, you guys need to listen to this podcast. Eric Weinstein and Julie, who's that guy who used to be on Fox? Tucker Carlson.
Tucker. Yeah.
All right. So Tucker has a podcast and you need to listen to his podcast. I think it's fun. And go and listen to the interview he did with Eric Weinstein. So Eric Weinstein is not religious, and he's a scientist. But if you listen to Tucker have this very polite conversation with him about how his belief in science is cohesive with religious perspectives, Eric doesn't really know what to do with it, because the truth is God created science too. It's not separate from each other. Now, so what does all this mean? If you want to have a country needs, and it's founding father stuff here, but if you look at history too, a country needs a shared language, a country needs to survive long-term, a shared religion, a country needs borders. Those are basically it. When you have those three things and, shared values that comes from the shared religions, right? If you have a country that has those three things, it can last, forever. And that's what the country is returning to. That's what our country is returning to by design. And then the question would be by whose design? And, we believe it's God's design. And that's what we're experiencing right now. We're experiencing a return to core American values. And the American values were based on core Christian values. And it's really fascinating. And even if you don't agree and share our perspectives and our religious views, open your mind to it and just find reasons to perhaps welcome in the beauty that we're all experiencing every single day. And everyone's looking for a spiritual attachment. Sometimes people will use government for that. Some people will use pursuit of things, consumerism, pursuit of money. Some people will use,
pursuit of self, where they
drugs.
say, well, I'm going to speak my truth.
Exactly. The woo-woo Eastern philosophy stuff that started in really 1968, that's all a pursuit of something to fill this hole that's in all of us. We're born wanting to feel connected to something. And the something we fill with drugs and alcohol sometimes, the something we fill again with, the government is my religion. People will look, there's something that's innate in all of us, this hole that needs to be filled, and we find all these false idols and prophets to fill that. And you don't feel complete. And you guys explore this yourself. until you fill that hole with your relationship with God. I found that to be true, certainly as the older I've gotten. And I've seen other people that I know personally and that I've followed forever in one form or another, they're all coming to find their faith. And some of these people you never would have guessed in a million years. Some of these people are famous, most of them aren't. So what's going on? What's happening in our country and probably the world right now? It's not because of our little podcast. Is Joe Rogan, if you guys listen to him, biggest podcast in the world, he's definitely becoming more comfortable with his faith and being a Christian.
Mhm.
And there's going to be more momentum built around people returning to faith because the consumer markets are demanding that and want that. That's interesting, don't you think?
Like Bible sales are off the charts right now.
How about that? You
Yeah.
know, Julie, I used to ask the question, and I was asking it somewhat facetiously, who was it or what was it that was trying to diminish the importance of housing? There was for a long time a lot of banter in media about, oh, the government should control housing and housing should be socialized. And somebody sent me, like, because I kept on asking again, I sort of knew why, but I didn't really understand why. Like, I can't even, it's still baffling to me that some people would believe that people are better off not owning homes. And I'm not talking about from necessarily primarily a financial perspective, though, if you want to talk about that. Julie, go ahead.
Well, economically, homeowners are 40 times as wealthy as somebody that rents. That's just a fact.
Yeah. I mean, we shouldn't have to convince you, dear real estate professional, fellow real estate professional, the importance of owning a home. But yet, there were people in the government and mainstream media that were trying to sell you on the idea that government should be socialized.
Mhm.
Everyone deserves a home. Home is an entitlement.
Yeah, especially after the housing crash, that was a big thing that got some legs for a while.
So do you know where that comes from, dear listener or viewer? Karl Marx. That's where it comes from. So the tenets of Marxism, one of them is nobody should, the private property rights and laws shouldn't be in existence. That there should be no, people aren't allowed. Now they'll say, well, it's because, people own real estate and own homes and it forces all these people to be tenants forever. And you have this, this fiefdom type, blah, 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 right? It's never worked. They say all this stuff. And so the government should control all housing. And it sounds exactly like communism because that's what it is. You know what else is missing in communism? Faith, because in religion, you know why? Because in communist environments, in socialist environments, they don't want you to have faith. They want you to have your faith, that hole in your heart is to be filled with government. All right. So it is interesting to me that right now, what we're experiencing is going to be a generational housing boom that's going to last at least 25 years. And all of and at the same time, we're having people return to faith. And then millions and millions and millions of people are going to enjoy the benefits and burden sometimes of home ownership. I think that's all these things that are happening. You got to be aware of them because in my lifetime, certainly, there's never been anything like this. And it's extraordinary. Our neighbor's cat, Julie Feather, just walked by my back window with the biggest rat I've ever seen.
Ew, gross. But go
Seriously,
Feather.
the rat is the size of half the cat.
Ew.
A little wildlife break.
Doing his job.
Yeah.
A
Well,
little morning hunting.
Exactly. So that's, I find all of these things happening simultaneously because we're all sharing this sort of storyline. We're all experiencing this, reality. And there's such a pivot that's happening right now that if you dial into it, if you're tuning into it, it's incredible just to be an observer of it, but it's also to be a participant in it. It's even more so. You guys are a participant in it because you're listening to this podcast right now. What are you thinking as I went through all that, Julie?
Well, I was thinking, we've talked about different podcasts and headlines and Bible sales are up. If you look at what is out there in the zeitgeist, like I was thinking about that Charlie Kirk interview that you sent me. It was with Barack Lurie. I think their question was, what if you found out that God was real? How would you change your behavior? I thought that was a really fascinating interview because they went pretty deep on that. It wasn't a very long interview.
I haven't listened to it yet, sweetie. So what did they talk about? So give me a book report.
So, that's the question. If you knew that God was real, I mean, you and I talk about these questions.
But everyone accepts it.
And everybody accepts it. How would your behavior change? How would society's behavior change? And one of the things that they talk about is not just the belief in God, but the necessity for, back to your earlier point about, okay, so let's say there was a the Big Bang Theory. Who created that? And they do talk a bit from a scientific standpoint. The odds of having a planet that sustains Earth are like 10 to the bazillionth, however many zeros you can actually write there. They said an example was if you stacked nickels on top of each other all the way from here to the moon and back, and there was one copper penny in the middle of that, that's the odds. That's about the numbers that it would take to have a planet like this.
What you're saying is basically this planet was made for humans and made for the other animals.
So you have a necessity for God's existence.
Yes, and it wasn't like, so agnostics would say, well, we evolved to the planet. We didn't evolve to the planet.
From what?
The planet was, exactly, the planet was made for us, and we were made for the planet. And so people say it's, again, this is all part of this poison that's entered into the culture of people believing there's scarcity. There's not enough land. There's not enough water. There's not enough clean air. There's not enough this. There's not enough that. And you guys believe it, right? I mean, it's easy to believe. Oh my gosh, we're going to run out of water. Oh my gosh, we're going to run out of food. Oh my gosh, we're going to run out of land. None of that is true.
But that's not true. Even within the United States, we have enough minerals and all kinds of different things to sustain us basically forever.
Forever.
That's not the popular headline.
So this planet was made for humans and the other forms of life.
Like specifically for us. Okay.
Yeah, but that's not Julie and I reading scripture to you. That is the science that's obvious, because we would like gravity. By the way, gravity is a theory too. Sorry. It's called the theory of gravity. Google it yourself. It's just basically with the belief structure.
It's the name of an existing force that, we study. That's
right.
It's but they talked about it. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Well, so they talked about the necessity for God because of the odds being against us, that there's even a universe, much less that we exist in it and on a planet that's tailor-made for us. But they also talked about economically, right? That having a North Star of Christianity, Judeo-Christian values is literally good for humanity. To have those rules, to have something that says, like even if you only look at the 10 Commandments, it's pretty good for our society that we have this rule saying that murdering each other is a bad idea.
You think?
Like that's kind of basic, right? And all of the other things that we have this necessity and that it does work for us. And it does, if we all have a mutual North Star, everything works better.
Right. Your hand is causing your screen, your background. Yeah. So, but Julie, that's a conversation I had with Jeremy McChesney, right? Remember I told you about that?
Uh-huh.
So Jeremy is an LDS. He's a Mormon. And I was trying to understand Mormonism, and he was telling me about it. He wasn't trying, I'm sure he was trying to convert us. He's Mormon. But I mean, the reality of it is that he told me at the end of the day, if you struggle to believe in God, he said that you have to believe in the realities of following the tenets of religion, because if you follow the 10 Commandments and the tenets of religion, let's just stick with Christianity, but pretty much they're all the same, no matter what religion, that you're going to discover, or the output of your life and the outcome of your life is going to be massively more favorable than if you don't.
Yes, that's right.
And that's what's fascinating. So if you look at the 10 Commandments, if you looked at the other scriptures and the lessons you're supposed to be learning, you struggle to believe in all the things, and you're so, you cannot get past the idea that evolution's a real thing. Julie's point, and I think now you're telling me what you learned from that, is you cannot argue that the tenets of religion, the rules, if you want to call them that, I don't like to follow rules, use whatever word you want to, guidelines or whatever, that those things will result in you having a better life and having a better outcome, having better relationships, having better financial outcomes, having better relationships with your family, the whole thing. And if you start there just by accepting the fact that these rules that I follow will increase my experience, the quality of my life and the lives of the people I love, well, then if you expand that to the rest of the country and then maybe the entire world, it is interesting. So when you go to different parts of the world where there is generational horribleness that happens, almost always there's a lack of a shared religion, or if there is a shared religion, if you look at the tenets of that religion, baked in is the horribleness. So they use
Mhm.
the horribleness, they use the religion to justify, you know, the horribleness again that they are committing on a regular basis. There isn't anything like that in Christianity. There is no rule in Christianity that makes it ever okay to kill somebody, ever. And that's the thing. Again, a lot of the, socialists and things like that are, well, that's not true, right? I mean, there is something in the, eye for an eye, but that's,
Yeah, but the point is to have a mutual agreement on what the rules that we live by are. And you do see a swing about that. Like I can't remember his name all of a sudden, the UK, right, where the prime minister said, we're going to have rules. You're going to come here and you're going to learn English. English is going to be our official language again. You come here, you immigrate, you're going to learn English. Also, you're not going to break all of our rules. You're going to have to integrate into our society. He said that he literally said that this whole thing of open borders, anything goes, that era is over. And that's very significant because the UK had been very much going the opposite direction for a long time, where they were like, come on in and you don't have to learn English. You just go into this neighborhood where all of you guys can live together and you don't have to follow our rules. And now it's like, we have evidence that that doesn't work for us. So I just think it's interesting that those trends are going that way. And back to the Judeo-Christian values, that as it turns out, that does make for a better society economically, socially, mentally, spiritually, everything is just better.
it is. We didn't get to your other points. You
That's
want to do,
okay.
you want to do a third one?
I'll do a little octopus thing because I always like to go down that road.
All right. So you guys, we talked about a bunch of different things. And as we warned you at the top of the show, on Fridays, we talk about, we use Julie's ideas, but we talk about whatever's top of mind. And I think that is pretty much all the things you and I have been talking about on our walks and in between
Yeah.
coaching sessions and creating content for these guys.
But by the way, point five that we just actually did talk about what my plan was for number 5. So that's in the notes.
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead and read that. Okay. And you got, yeah, there you go. Just reinforce what we just
Well,
talked about.
it was all stuff that we've already talked about the no evidence for evolution and how does creationism and intelligent design figure in as a result of perhaps knowing that. So I think we covered that. But I want to do one quick little thing. I was thinking about, I do follow a lot of octopus stories online just for fun. And some people wonder, could they be aliens? Well, a wild 2018 theory says yes, claiming that their smarts, including 3 hearts, blue blood, and arms that think for themselves, came from cosmic eggs that rode on comets 540 million years ago. Because after all, octopuses are kind of weird, right? They have 33,000 genes. Humans only have 20,000. They have tricks like RNA editing to adapt to icy depths. They seem like aliens if you really study them. Like they're not like anything else on the planet. And some scientists speculated that their brains and camouflage skills are just too advanced for Earth's actual timeline, hinting at an extraterrestrial origin. But experts say that they don't have any evidence, no alien DNA, just earthly, what they're calling evolution here. So again, back to that debate. Octopuses split from squids 135 million years ago, and their quirks do actually fit our planet's story. Their knack for escaping tanks, solving puzzles, all of that makes you wonder. So, I think the debate goes on whether they might have something funky going in there, or are they just, maybe something really interesting that the intelligent designer, i.e. God, threw into the ocean just to make things interesting and say, you know what? I know how to do that. Isn't that interesting? Study these guys.
That's a fun story. I love that one.
Yeah.
All right. So story number 1, and you guys got to vote. Story number 1 is paws or claws, the very big mix up. And story number 2, you got to read that strange city name, Julie. Story number 2 is Sledgehammer Surprise, the lost city of
Darren Kuyu over in Turkey.
Oh, thank God I married a smart woman. Story number 4 is
Space squids or earthly geniuses, the octopus alien debate.
story number 5 is
No evolution? Well, then who's the cosmic interior designer then?
there you go. Hey, I think this was a good show, Julie.
Yeah, it was different. We did warn them.
We did warn them. So yeah, share the show with everyone. I do want to do a special shout out to all of you guys at EXP. EXP introduced co-sponsoring, and a lot of people have asked us if we're interested in co-sponsoring. If you don't know what co-sponsoring is because you're not EXP, well, just bear with me. But yes, we're open to it. We're definitely interested in having that conversation, and anything and everything we could do to help you, let us know. If you're not an EXP and you're interested in joining EXP, if you were ready to upgrade your broker experience, if you're a broker and you're ready to upgrade your own experience, I'd love to have that conversation with you as well. Text me directly at 512-758-0206. Hey, let's be honest. If you're listening after this podcast, which is definitely not real estate coaching or training, you are a Tim and Julie fan, which we appreciate because we're a you fan. And we'd love to have you guys. We'd love to earn the right to be your partner at eXp Realty. So text me directly at 512. This is my real cell phone number. Don't call. I will never answer. I only text me 512-758-0206. Or there's a link down below where you can watch some videos and look at the website that will help you explore all the benefits that our eXp Realty Group offers on top of what eXp already offers, which is extraordinary. So either way, if you're ready to move on with your real estate journey and you're ready to explore what eXp has to offer, we would be honored to be your partner at eXp Realty. And I gave you the 2 paths forward. So in the meantime, I have to have more coffee. That's for damn sure, because I have to get on another podcast. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day. God bless. And we'll talk with you on the show anytime. Remember, we have literally thousands of past podcasts that if you want to Tim and Julie binge, they're all there waiting for you. We have
most of them exclusively about real estate, not octopuses or aliens.
That's right. Or religion. They're about real estate. So if that's what you want, it's there waiting for you and you can binge. And have a fantastic day. Happy Memorial Day. God bless.